Welcome back to another episode of Engage Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Laura Woods.
Here I am again, Ryan Argenta.
And Tom Thornton with Professional Standards Committee.
So Tom, tell us what's been going on in professional standards.
Well, it's been very busy right now with the fact that we have 17,000 plus pilots on the property. We do receive a lot of calls. Typical call level right now for us is we're running right now 12 to 18 calls a week, which is quite a bit. Not all of them professional standards. We use an 800 line that people call into. So sometimes people are just looking for guidance to other committees, which we can direct them to. But a lot of people call because they're having a CRM breakdown within the cockpit or a peer-to-peer issue, and that's where we come in, trying to mediate the situation between pilots. And the way the committee works basically is we're totally confidential when people call in. So we don't share our information with the MEC, LEC, chief pilots. It's between the caller who calls in, the professional standards volunteer who takes that call, and the other party. And that's where it stays within there. We are confidential in that it stays in there, but we do not work as a committee. We're not anonymous. So if you do call in, you have to be willing to be part of the solution of why you called, because we don't work anonymously. You can't call to professional standards and report somebody. You have to say, hey, I had an issue with an individual, and we'll help navigate with you to get a resolution that works for both of you, give you some tools in your toolbox to better get out and work with that person in the future, understand where the breakdown happened or where you guys weren't getting along, something of that nature. But we don't just do a report where we go and turn the other person in or go after the other person because you had a personal issue with them. So it is a peer-to-peer mediation. That's our primary goal of what we do out there. And we try to resolve situations where there was breakdown in the cockpit, misunderstandings, personal conflicts with each other, and so forth. We work very well with the pilot group in that arena. We get a lot of calls occasionally from pilots and flight attendants, and we have a difficult time with that because we don't have a segue into working with the flight attendants because they're not unionized and we don't have a direct contact with that. And so it's really hard for us to handle flight attendant issues or other employee groups. The one employee group that we do have very good luck with is our flight dispatchers, and they are also unionized and they have a professional standards committee within themselves, and we have a very good working relationship. So those are the groups that we can work with. Stuff that ends up in the chief pilot's office sometimes between two pilots. Chief pilots are very good about kicking it back to professional standards, and we get about 40% of their work right back in our lap where we're able to resolve situations. Again, we don't keep any written records. We don't keep a file. Misconception with professional standards out there is that we have a big file cabinet with all the people in there that we've talked to, and we don't. We handle things in a situation where we try to do it just with the individual at hand, and we try to come up with a resource for them to be able to better get out there and fly the trip. What we want to do is try to restore the breakdown that these two pilots can go out and operate the piece of equipment again at a later date and understand maybe where that breakdown took place.
So really, you want to make sure that ProStans is there before anyone goes to HR or involves a company. And you guys are really there to say, hey, you two can figure this out. Let's figure out what the issue was and let's break it down and maybe we can make this work better for the next time.
Absolutely. And the situation is we want everybody to start at the union level, the lowest level of professional standards. We are the pilot assistance side of it. Work very closely with the PAN committee. We work closely with aeromedical, and we work closely with DPAC. So we're a resource for the pilot to come to in a non-jeopardy situation where we can try to work that situation out. We have a great working relationship with the chief pilot's office that when stuff like this bypasses us for some reason, goes to the chief pilot, that they do bring it back to us, and we have first shot at it. It's easy to work it at the lowest level and work up from that level and not go to the top, because once it's at the top, it's very hard to bring it back down to the lower level. And so what we try to do is say, start with us, give us an opportunity and some time to try to resolve your issue and work with you and not take it right up to the company. When it gets into the chief pilot's office, it's going to be where a chief pilot's now wanting statements from both parties and so forth, and that becomes much more difficult because now there's more exposure to that. And if it goes to the HR department, which is not the end of the world, but then it's really out of all of our hands. It's very hard for us to get it back. So if you could start with us, you always have the ability to go up. It's very hard to start at the top and come back down.
That's good that the chief pilots know that they can call you guys and they might say, hey, it's not really what we need to deal with right now. Why don't you guys deal with it on your own? and we'll see if you guys can fix it. And then if not, we'll see what needs to be done. But that's really great that the chief pilots even know that you guys are a great resource to fix some of those issues that you might have in the cockpit.
Right.
Tom, you've been doing this for a long time, right? 1998?
Been doing this since 1998. Yep. One job only, and that's the only thing I've done is this. So
You're the guy.
Yeah, you seem some. So what does a typical ProStans call look like, feel like? At what point, let's say I'm a new hire, or I'm not familiar, or maybe I came from the military and I'm not familiar with ProStans. Like, what kind of things would I call ProStans for? And maybe what kind of things would I not? And would you prefer that pilots call in and say, hey, I'm having this conflict with another pilot, and I don't know if this belongs to ProStans or not? Would you rather people call in and kind of ask or get some assistance, and you can say, no, this isn't in our purview? Or
yes, I'd much rather everybody start at our level, and let's hear it, because if it's not directly associated with professional standards, it may be something that may be the Pilot's Assistance Network, or it could be something that maybe is an aeromedical question that's causing something. Let's try to see if we can keep it within the realms of the pilot's assistance, and if we can resolve that for that person before we take it up to the next level. And I'm not saying by any means that the chief pilot office isn't a great resource. They'll do the same thing. They're going to triage what's going on, what the call comes in, and they'll decide whether it is. And a lot of times they do kick it back to the ALPA Association for guidance and resolution on that. So that's a very good point that you make as to where to start. If we could start at this level, we always can move up, or we can do it. And as we always say at the company level, we expand our team, and I've sort of stolen that too, because it's exactly what we want to do. We'll expand the team if we need to, and we'll find out where it needs to be. But let's have a conversation on what took place. The biggest thing is peer-to-peer conflict, whether it's a CRM breakdown, it's crews that get rerouted or are on a long duty day and the fatigue sets in and they get short with each other, they snap at each other, something like that. There's inappropriate discussions in the cockpit. We really shouldn't be talking about religion and politics and these type of stuff in the cockpit, because that's going to spur some type of a conflict between somebody. Somebody's going to disagree, and then you're going to divide, and that doesn't help. And that's the safety side of what we want to see. We want to see the crews work cohesively. With 17,000 people plus at the airline, we don't expect everybody to be best friends and beer drinking and going out to eat and stuff sometimes, but we do expect that you can move the piece of equipment from point A to point B effectively, safely, and comfortably for the passengers, and that's what we're looking at. And we want the crews to get along. Realistically, sitting there speaking about Delta Airlines, we meet bi-yearly with all the airlines and interact with them. And when you really look at our pilot group, we have an excellent pilot group. They really work well together. And even with all the problems we hear with management stuff, our operation and pilot group and leadership, flight operations stuff, they actually do work fairly well together. Because if you look at some of the other airlines, and I don't want to sit there and start throwing people under the bus, but other airlines have a lot more problems due to multiple mergers and groups not seeing eye to eye on things. And that's obviously stuff that will cause conflict. If you get two different airlines that didn't like each other, now they're merged, and seniority and stuff like that. So we do have a very good group here. But that's the big thing that we see. That's the majority of stuff. Proficiencies things come into play at times where people say, hey, I'm flying with a guy, I just don't think he's up to speed. We can look at it. And a typical situation like that is I get a call, say a captain says, hey, I'm just flying with a new first officer, or a new first officer flying with a new captain on that piece of equipment. And they're like, he just doesn't know what he's doing. He's way behind on everything that's going on. I said, all right, let's get a little idea of what's going on. And I'll talk to the other party and see what's actually going on there. And when you really look at the nuts and bolts of it, you look at the other guy and you go, he's got 18 hours in the airplane. I mean, we all know what 18 hours in the airplane looks like. We're looking through a soda straw. And sometimes we have to be a mentor, even if we're the FO, to try to help that person. Give a little courtesy and say, hey, I understand you're new. You're a little slow maybe with the FMS, or you're slow with understanding this. Let me see if I can help. Not just jump to conclusions and say, he just doesn't know what he's doing and he's unsafe. That's not mean he's unsafe. He's new on the airplane, and we've all been new at some point in time. So those are type of calls that we take that, we have to sit there and work with both parties and say, hey, let's take a step back and let's see if we can be a little bit of a help to the individual, and just instead of just saying that you just don't know what you're doing. People are quick to react in some of these kind of things. And again, like I said, when we have long duty days, which the airline has, especially coming into summer flying months and stuff, people tend to get short with people. The days are long, we get reroutes, we have weather, stuff like that, and that's where you can start breaking down in communications and so forth. We've all flown with the people that are a little overbearing. They demand a lot more than maybe the other guy you flew with or a gal you flew with We all learn that we have to adapt a little bit when we get in the airplane. And that's something that not everybody's good at, is to adapt to that person's style. But when we have people that are really demanding, we have to say, hey, give your other crew members a little bit of room to do their thing and not just be the point where it's your way or the highway. Obviously, we know that doesn't work long term either.
Absolutely. Ryan, we were talking earlier, and you had a really good example of how ProStans has worked for you in the past. Do you want to talk about that?
My experience with ProStans was flying in the 330 with a particular captain who was really just a little off, kind of cold personality, and it was fine. He didn't do anything that would have had me call ProStans, but it was like just a little demeaning with his FOs and didn't wait for the crew, just kind of went to the crew bus, hung out on his own, which is fine. But yeah, it was just a difficult personality to be in the cockpit with. Some of the things he said and did with the cabin crew was kind of off. And fast forward maybe 3 years, I had a deadhead in and a one leg back with the same captain. And I recognized his name and thought, okay, I'm just going to avoid him a little bit and we'll fly this one leg back. No big deal. And I showed up to breakfast in the morning and he recognized me and he said, Ryan, come sit with me. And I was kind of like, oh no. And so he pushed a chair out and he says, yeah, good to see you again. How you been? And I'm like, this isn't the same guy, but it was. And so we chatted and he was super nice and friendly and really handled the crew very well. And so we're at cruise and he kind of told the story and he said, I was getting calls from ProStans and they were giving me some feedback about how I was talking to the FOs and talking to the crews. And he's like, I'm just a gruff guy and this is just who I am. He said, I had no idea. He said, I go to work, I stick to myself. I don't go out. I don't really talk. I do my thing and I go home. And he said, so those calls were actually helpful for me. And he's like, now I just show my personality a bit. I'm a nice guy. I do that. He said, I don't go out with the crew, but I think that's okay. And I thought that was a good story of, okay, that's a success story of ProStans and how it could work.
And absolutely. The misconception out there really comes down to a lot of people, they think that we're a disciplinary committee and that we go out and get the bad guys. And that's not really where we are. We're here to try to bring people together. And we get calls all the time. And it comes through, we run an 800 answering service, which is the fastest way to get a hold of one of our volunteers.
I wanted to mention the toll-free number is 855-778-2637. We'll put that in the description of the podcast.
Right.
I wanted that out there so that people have that. And like you said, it's on the two-sided card, one with PAN, which is another great organization. You can go to dal.alpa.org to the ProStans website.
So on the two-sided card, we've made it even easier for the membership. So you can get the two-sided cards. You'll find it at all the bases. It's on all the chief pilots' desks also. You can find that two-sided card, and it does have a QR code on it now. So if you just scan the QR code, it keeps our number in your phone. Automatically loads it. You don't have to do anything. It's the best way to actually reach one of our people. To give you a little insight of our committee, we're operating right now 25 volunteers. Unlike chief pilots' offices and unlike base reps and stuff who are dealing with one base, we're dealing with the entire airline. So if you take the same size airline, basically United Airlines, and you look at how many people they're using in ProStans, they have right at about 96 people.
Wow,
so
that's
a big
a lot.
difference. Our committee is very structured in the fact that even though it's not base specific, so you could end up calling ProStans and be talking to somebody who's based in New York. We're all qualified to handle those cases. We do it that way because that gets somebody instantly on the phone with you instead of waiting for that person to have to get off a trip and call you back, so we can get somebody right on the phone with you. It's been a very effective tool for us. So typically when somebody will call in, they'll say something. And the misconception is when people call in and say, hey, I'm calling to file a report. We don't take reports. And it's not, hey, you got a problem with some guy and we're going to go out and make that better and go after that person. We're not the punishing committee. Okay, what we're here to do is try to resolve the issue. What was the breakdown? Where did you feel wronged or what happened in that situation? Where was the breakdown in the CRM or the structure of what happened so that I can get you both to understand that? I don't need to make you best friends, but I need to be able to make you work the trip. And that's where we come into play.
So it sounds like more you've had an experience with another pilot and you just want that pilot to get the feedback,
right?
And maybe you don't feel comfortable giving that feedback directly, right. Or maybe you did and it didn't go so well,
right?
And you don't want somebody else to be subject to that same treatment.
Right.
So now we bring in ProStans of like, hey, let's give this person some feedback and maybe make it better for the next person. Because FOs can bid avoid, captains can't. There's ways around it, but make it better.
Right.
So I'm on the ProStans website, and you must have written this portion, but it says it must be emphasized that ProStans is not the Pilot Morals Committee, nor the Hat, Haircut, and Shoe Shine Committee.
That is correct. We do not enforce the uniform or the haircuts people call up. That's a company situation, and the company enforces their uniform policy. Ultimately, our goal is to try to keep the group working together with limited confrontation out there. It's not who's going to win or who's right or wrong. It's, can we come to some middle ground? Is there a mediation point where we can get to a point where both parties understand what happened, why it happened? You know, is there some room here to understand some of what these dynamics are that bring that up? And so it's not always a one-sided thing, or he did this and he's wrong, or I did this and I'm wrong. And sometimes it's just how we perceive things and how we listen and how we interpret things.
So maybe if both people can change their perspective just slightly, and then everything can be worked out.
Right.
You alluded to it earlier, but this doesn't necessarily have to be between pilots. This could be potentially with a conflict with another employee, or say a flight attendant or an ACS member who's having a bad day. Obviously, you want to try to work it out one-on-one at the lowest level beforehand. But if you don't want to bring management into it, obviously the flight attendants aren't unionized. It makes it kind of muddies the water there, where it's like, well, I don't really want to get this person in trouble. I just need the behavior to be corrected. So maybe you call ProStans and say, look, I'm having a conflict with another employee group. Is ProStans able to help with that?
And that's a big challenge that we have at Delta Airlines. And unfortunately, the other major airlines out there have a very good working relationship with their other employee groups, because they are unionized and they have these same basic committees within their union structure at other employee groups, so that the pilots can talk to the flight attendant professional standards groups at these airlines and so forth. Unfortunately, we're not unionized anywhere else besides the dispatchers, so it's very difficult for us to talk across lines, especially with flight attendants. I don't even have a way to access them because I don't have a database to call them. So that is a big challenge for us here on the property at Delta, is to working with other employee groups.
You've been doing this for 27 years. What's the wildest story that you can share with us? Obviously, you don't have to have names. Just give us a situation.
Well, without getting into real detail, the wildest stuff what we've seen is obviously the off-the-wall stuff that's really crazy. And it changes over the years, and it changes obviously through the times that we deal with. It's funny, our workload goes up and down depending on sort of the tempo of what's going on in the company. When we're in contract negotiations and we're hot and heavy on that, what's the talk in the cockpit? Lots of contract stuff, and the guys get sideways with each other. A big obstacle for us in the last several years has been social media. Social media is a big player out there, and currently the National Professional Standards Policy Manual, we do not operate and deal with social media issues. And the reason for that is we're not the moderator of the site, and we really can't see it. Typically, when people get into a conflict on social media, they're typing with one hand and they got a cocktail in the other. They're not afraid to get in front of the keyboard and knock somebody out on the other side because they don't have to look at them and deal with them. They're just talking on the keyboard. And then they want ProStans to come in. Hey, what are you going to do? This guy's beat me up on social media, and our recommendation is get off social media. That's the easiest way to stop it. If you stop responding to it, then you're not going to have to deal with it, right? So that's a huge obstacle right now in there. But some of the stuff that's wild, when they get on the social media stuff, they're not afraid to say anything to the next party.
Yeah, keyboard courage.
Keyboard courage, exactly. We get a lot of calls like, hey, I'm getting beat up here, I'm getting this is inappropriate stuff. But over the years, people have done stupid things on airplanes that they probably shouldn't do. Again, layovers, they always get creative on layovers, on doing something that doesn't look good for anything, and we get sucked into trying to resolve that. The company knows about this. They're not real happy about that, but they told us to try to give you a holler, and we really need to correct what you're doing on the layovers and the way you're acting and so forth.
Any parting words for our listeners?
Please use us as the first point of contact. Reach out. Let us try to see what we can do for you. And if we need to direct you into a different committee, we'll get you in a different committee. Sometimes people call just talking with us over time. We don't even need to call the other person. Sometimes we can give you some tools to use to help negotiate and navigate down the road of what happened, and maybe just help you understand it and you feel good enough about moving on. But start at the union level, start at the lowest level, and let's move up from there.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Tom. Great point. Tom Thornton, Chairman of Professional Standards. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your words.
Thanks for having us.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.